One of the things is, again, and I'm sure you've seen, great, your experience with seeing this, but is how does Data Vault 2 enable data science? Some of the examples you've seen and how this all can work.
Well, I've seen it. Obviously, I've seen it inside the intelligence community. But let me give you an example. Let me just tell you guys a little story, and this is true. This is a true story, which are always the best anyway, I think. But when Dan brought Data Vault out of Lockheed back in 2000, 2001, he was working as a consultant. He was hired by a business that at that time was one of the first online insurance brokerages in the U.S. And that was business. It was also one of the first companies that actually built a data vault as their foundational online transaction processing system. That data vault actually undergirded their whole online, if you will, website process. So Dan introduced this concept of using a state transition diagram to help the business understand what was happening to the visitors that came to the site. Getting this insight into the patterns of behavior, those are data science type insights that you derive. But they wanted to look at the patterns of behavior on the website so they could mitigate this occurrence that we've all come to know in if you do business on the web as an abandoned cart, right? And so they added this mining engine into the equation. So the way it worked was that, as a web surfer visited their website, the company would capture their session ID and their cookie into two hubs. And this is before people started turning cookies off, right? But their system would pop an ad to incentivize the web surfer their visitor to sort of move along the path toward a sale, right? From one state to the next, if you will. And then the next incentive would be something like a promotional offer to get the surfer's email address, which is another business key from our perspective, which got stored in a third hub. And then if they were able to get that email address, then the surfer's state was changed from just a web surfer or a visitor, to a prospect, because now the company had a way to reach back out to them. Then they'd pop another ad or promotion. They'd incentivize the prospect to sort of enter their home address, because if they could get their home address, they could provide a quote or an estimate for insurance. So all of this sort of makes sense. Once you have a residential address, right, that gives the business the ability to actually give you an accurate quote or an estimate, right? And so that also created what they would call a qualified lead. Now, the thing was, the way the business made their money was by selling a policy, right, as a brokerage. So there was always this risk that someone could take the estimate or the quote and then go sort of bargain on their own, right, with the insurance companies, because exactly which company is giving exactly which quote coming out of the brokerage. And so, they wanted to make sure that they popped another ad or incentive to move that qualified lead into a customer, so that they went through the purchase process. So what they did was, along each step of this process, they built link structures between each hub. These links are what we call exploration links, and they were used to capture the relationship between the hubs as the web surfer moved through these different states, from one state to the next. And they collected all of that data into the data vault for about 6 months. And they fed that data to this machine learning engine, this mining engine, and they trained the engine. And the mining engine refined the data. It calculated various scores, related to ads and incentives and, things like that. So that what they ended up doing was that the mining engine would start popping various ads. They were presented to the surfer based on behaviors and responses, as they sort of changed state. During the first 6 months after tuning the ML engine, right, the revenue of that company grew from $66 million to about $125 million in 6 months. And then they took that data, they tuned the engine, they continued to receive and feed the data from the exploration links into that engine. continuously, refining the algorithm and the data and things like that, the engine got so fast that it would literally pop an ad almost as soon as someone hit a button, right? Hit the next process button. And they left this thing running for 12 months. They actually got so fast that they could get a surfer from their initial visit hitting the website to a purchase in 5 minutes. And when you look at the way online, marketing and online sales behave, the faster you can get someone into a purchase situation, the more likely you are that you're going to actually make that sale. Basically, at the end of 18 months, the full life cycle of this process, they had moved the company from a $66 million company to about a $330 million company. And then that company sold to they were bought out, right? And so that's how we use Data Vault and how it can be used in data science. Last year, at last year's Worldwide Data Vault Consortium, the entire conference focused on, artificial intelligence and machine learning, a variety of, data science aspects. So we had a week's worth of presentations from data scientists and analytics professionals, including, a PhD candidate working out of Oxford University in UK. They all spoke about how they were able to utilize Data Vault to optimize and enable their AI and their ML algorithms. So these are just examples of how, Data Vault really enables data science. It was originally designed from the concepts around neural nets that are found organically in nature. So makes sense.
It makes complete sense now. And those are such great examples. And yeah, it's just kind of, for me, it's eye-opening just to think of the possibilities, like you said, and with those links and being able just to continue to drive the change that you can within an organization. So yeah, that's awesome.
So the fine grain data that Data Vault captures, that's the key, right? And then how it's modeled as well makes it conducive to training data science models.
Well, the whole idea of what we call exploration links is an exploration link is designed to discover relationships in data, in and among data, that are not evident in the operational systems. And because of that, if you think about what a lot of data scientists' goals are, they're looking for that outlier. They're looking for that sort of anomaly in the data that is not self-evident when you're looking at large volumes of data. So exploration links are one method that enable data scientists to use this derivation, if you will, of relationships among data. One of the things we did inside the DoD was we used those algorithms and we helped the data science do some scoring on the algorithm itself. For example, you have this idea of confidence ratings, if you will, and then how do you test those confidence ratings? A confidence rating, and just sort of as just a quick touch, it's not this simple, but think of a confidence rating as saying, an algorithm comes up with a derivation that this piece of data is related to this piece of data. And the algorithm has a rating of, let's just say, 86%, that these two elements, these two keys, if you will, are related to one another. Well, what's interesting is another score, and the other score that we're looking at has to do with, you're this confident, but what does the data say? So if you have a confidence rating of 86, and then you run a score and you let the data tell the story, you may find that only 20% of the data support that confidence rating, which means that you have a false positive going on, because while the algorithm guesses that this is a relationship, the data doesn't support it, or doesn't support it strongly enough. It's called a strength rating. And so that's kind of in a nutshell. What you can do with Data Vault is the algorithm scores the derived relationship. The data tells the story that supports it. So that is one sort of
that makes sense.
Illustration, right?
Yeah, really helps the data scientists with their feature engineering aspects of their job, right? What variable should I include? What's the relationship between the two? It just helps guide the exploration phase as well as the feature engineering aspect of it as well. No, that makes sense.